Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Sean Cole, and right off the bat, I did promise that once I had this wheel up and running, I was going to show it to you in action. And before I get to that, I'm going to show you my favorite settings for this wheel in Codemasters F1 2011. Well, just a couple of days ago, I made a video showing the unboxing of the new Ferrari F150 Italia add-on wheel for the T500 RS. It was pretty straightforward, and we got it up and running fairly quickly. But in that video, I also mentioned that once it was running, I'd be doing some driving with it. So here I am today to show off this wheel in action. But before I get to that, I want to show you some of the settings that I used in-game, as well as letting you know a trick or two that I have learned. Also, I had left out just how much this wheel is and where you can get it. The wheel will be sold as an add-on that attaches to the T500 for €149 or $199 in the US. And the integral version of the T500 RS with the Ferrari wheel will be €599, and both should be available in the beginning of October through Amazon in the US. Now let's talk about the profiler and my favorite settings for F1 2011. The profiler has 3 different tabs. The first tab is Test Input. On this tab, you can see the wheel in action when you move it. This is also where you will see a spot to adjust the degrees of rotation on the wheel. For F1 2011, I like it at 240 degrees. You also want to make sure that the wheel is set to separate pedals. And then lastly is the option between normal and advanced mode. You can pick either one here, and there's a good reason for each. In the normal mode, the wheel has a total of 13 buttons and 3 D-pads. However, it is in normal mode that F1 2011 will recognize the wheel as a T500 and preset the controls. In advanced mode, the wheel has 25 buttons and 1 D-pad. This is great and gives you more options, however, the wheel will not be recognized in-game as a T500. Is that a big deal? Well, not really. However, the game has a bug and you need to tell it you are using a wheel every time you start the game. In normal mode, if you skip the intro of the game by pressing the wet button on the wheel, the game knows you are using a wheel and defaults to that. In the profiler, the second tab is for testing the forces and can be ignored for now. The third tab is where we actually adjust the wheel settings. Here's how I have things set up for F1 2011. Overall strength of forces, 70. Constant, 100. Periodic, 50. Spring, 18. And damper, 10. The auto center switch is checked to let the game control it. Now let's start up F1 2011 and make a few adjustments there. I had mentioned using normal mode, and once our controls are set up in game, you will be able to use the wet switch to advance through the menus. If it is your first time, then you will need to use the keyboard, but from that point on, you are all set up. Navigate to the My F1 section and then go to Driving Controls. On this screen, you can switch the control profile to Thrustmaster T500 RS. This will automatically map your controls and force feedback on the wheel. I also noticed that if you go to the advanced wheel settings, that this profile has a default of 20% dead zone. I moved this and all of the other settings to 0. And when you leave that screen, you will notice the control profile has now switched to custom, and that's totally normal and acceptable. And when using this on the PC version, you can also remap any of the buttons to any controls that you want. You can also move to the Force Feedback Options tab. I have my feedback on, my environmental effects to 20%, the feedback strength is at 100, and the wheel weight is at 50. So now we have this all set up, and it's time to get out on the track. I'm going to do exactly that, but first I'm going to take a short break, and when I come back, I'm going to show you some driving and tell you a little bit about what I think about the wheel.
Open Wheeler is not just another racing seat. It is made with the input of real racing fans who know the mechanics of racing. The Open Wheeler can be used by almost anybody, from a small child to a fully grown adult. Just like the seat in a real car, Open Wheeler has a wide range of adjustable positions, just like a real car. including the angle of the seat up and back, and the pedal distance and wheel height. Open wheeler is super light and it only weighs about 50 pounds, and it's really easy to move around the house with its built-in wheels, and it folds down for easy storage.
Welcome back to the show. So the important thing is, how does the wheel work in-game? And right off the bat, one of the most important things is the button configurations. The buttons were all mapped right where I wanted them, or more importantly, the way they are labeled on the wheel. So your KERS and DRS buttons are now live. Another thing that is nice is the wheel now controls the menus as well. The diff-in dial works the menus left to right, while the CHRG dial moves the menus up and down. And while in the menus, the green K or KERS button is your select button, and the red button PL will take you back in the menus. Also, the wet switch is the escape button and will take you to the menus while driving. Now let's talk about the driving experience in F1 2011. At first impression, I thought to myself, wow, this wheel is very small and very quick. I immediately was having a bit of trouble and was very over-aggressive in the turns. Much of that felt like the smaller wheel, but funny enough, the wheel is only about a half an inch smaller than the GT wheel, which now seems so giant to me. But lap after lap, I started to get used to the wheel fairly quickly. What is most obvious at first is how smooth the wheel is. In addition to the wheel, it is also very stiff with absolutely no flex or side-to-side movement. The other thing that is very obvious is the power of the wheel. F1 cars have gigantic front tires and massive downforce, and this can be felt in the wheel. By the time I started getting up to speed and comfortable with the wheel, things really started to come together. At F1 speeds, you really need to be able to turn the wheel fast at times. A chicane might only be milliseconds between full left and right lock. The Ferrari F1 Italia add-on has turned the T500 into one of the fastest wheels that I've ever driven. It takes some getting used to, and I still have a tendency to overdrive at times. But when I need a quick turn to avoid contact, or a super fast correction to prevent a spin, the wheel comes through. Then come the buttons. I literally have 6 buttons and 2 dials within the reach of my fingers without moving my hands. This is a huge advantage when driving at these speeds. This includes the ability to navigate through the pit menus, change fuel mapping, and other onboard systems in F1 2011. And lastly are the paddle shifters. They are also tucked in right at my fingertips and have a good positive click. They are a little light in the touch, so I have made a few misshifts with them. Also, the rocker motion, which means if I accidentally push the shifter, it will give me the opposite shift. This could be used as an advantage for shifting at full lock, but for me has caused more misshifts than been beneficial. All in all, I can see why the modern F1 wheel has gone to this shape and configuration. In this game, it feels quite natural. So really, the only problem I'm going to have is driving any other cars in-game. I mean, it's just too cool seeing the exact wheel that I'm holding here in the game with the buttons working, the driver pressing them just like I do. So I'm sorry, McLaren. I'm sorry, Red Bull. I might just be a Ferrari guy from now on. So I hope this helps you with your Ferrari wheel, your T500, and F1 2011. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.